Great. Thanks, everyone. I'm Lindsay Hill, Product Manager for Stackstorm. Some of you may know me from my earlier smash hits, NFT 8, 9, and 12. Back here reprising my role. I've been on both sides of the table. Both sides, they have pluses and minuses. I like both sides, actually. That's good. Today, I just want to give you a quick run through of a couple of demos of actually doing some of the stuff with a combination of automation and using Insight architecture. There's a couple of things I want to do. Just want to flip back to this slide here, let's say. One of the reasons I'm in automation is because I'm fundamentally lazy. I get bored of doing the same things again and again. And so when we were talking earlier about this, we're saying, okay, I've got this SLX VM, I've got this guest VM, I can tell the SLX, all right, I want to forward traffic from the ASIC through to the guest VM. But to do that, I've got to go into SLX, say, okay, I want to mirror traffic matching these, either these ACLs or from these ports. I've got to go onto here and say, all right, capture the packets. I've then got to go and extract the pack. I've got to then grab the PCAP from there, either look at a TSP dump on there, or pull the PCAP back somewhere, look at it in Wireshark, whatever. That is kind of like tedious, especially if I want to do it in multiple places. If I want to do that, let's say I've got a leaf spine network and I want to run a packet capture on 4 leaves at once and pull all of those PCAPs back to one place. So I said, all right, I'll make myself a little workflow which goes and does this stuff for me and does it from Slack. So I said, all right, so let's have a look. So I wrote, I can't spell, that's all right. Try that again. See, this is proof it's not a video because I edit out my typos on those. So I've set up a couple of commands here, or a couple ones here. So I've got a capture filter on switch or a multi-capture to capture in multiple places. So what I'm going to do, give it a here, I'm going to say, go and capture packets matching this filter on these switches, upload them to CloudShark and just give me the links. And I'll all going well, it'll show me. So let's say I've got a leaf spine network, got some problem with BGP somewhere. I want to capture some of that BGP traffic, and I want to capture that on a couple of my leaf nodes, and I want to go and stick that on CloudShark so I can have a look at it, see what the hell is going on, why is this not working. In this case, BGP is working, but don't worry about that. So I'll say multi-capture, put on my filter, on switches, leaf 1, leaf 2. I'm going to give it a timeout of 65 seconds here. The way I've set up my workflow is it'll grab the first 100 packets or 300 seconds worth, or I'll set it a bit shorter. I'm pretty sure that most people here will know why I chose 65 seconds if I'm capturing BGP traffic. High chance I'm going to actually capture something useful because I should hit at least one keep alive session going through there. So that's kicked off a workflow. That'll take about a minute or so. While that's off doing its thing, let's go and take a look at this. Here is my Stackstorm workflow composer server where my workflow is actually running. There's a whole bunch of actions that are being run within here. Remember I said I'm lazy? So underneath it all, there's like a bunch of commands that are being run here. The chance of me running all of those commands manually on multiple systems is, let's face it, it's kind of low. So that's why I wrote a workflow to make my life a bit easier. So let's go and take a look at what this one actually looks like underneath it. Open that one up. Now do this here. Don't worry too much about the details of it because there's a bunch of steps in here. But my point is that within my workflow, I've got a bunch of steps to do. I've got to go and set up the mirror sessions on the SLX side. I've got to go and set up the packet capture. I've got to, in my case, set up the packet capture, pull the PCAPs back. I then go and count the packets to see how many I captured. If I captured a non-zero amount, upload them to CloudShark, which actually looks like quite promising based on that. If there's some upload to CloudShark, publish a message to Slack, which conveniently just came through right at that time, and then go back and tear down the mirror to say, hey, okay, we're all done.
And there's an error condition there. If it doesn't upload, it throws the toys out the cot.
There is an error condition there, and that one's that just throws a message to Slack and says, "Oops." In my case, ruh-roh, something went wrong. So there's a couple of things here. So one is all of those ones there. You can see a success or failure path. So failures if it's just any general failure. This one here actually has it's got two possible success paths. So if it counts the packets and sees, okay, there was no packets captured, it's not a failure as such. It's just it's a condition that happened and I want to go and execute some different actions. I don't necessarily want to bail out at that point. Now, in my case, on Slack here, it's posted back here and said, okay, cool, here's your ones here. So if I click on that, that has uploaded my PCAP to CloudShark. I'm definitely not in any way associated with CloudShark, just to be clear on that, but I think it's a really cool tool.
It's a cool demo.
It's so much better than opening Wireshark and sitting there while it's loading dissectors and looking around. So it's super easy. I've got a link. I can then share that with people. I can pull the PCAP. And so I was able to do that just from running that command on Slack, which, again, it's not going to solve every possible condition. It's not going to replace a complete traffic monitoring packet broker type solution. That's not the intention. But for those simple sorts of problems, when you're like, oh, I've got this, I just need to grab some packets from there, look at them.
But if you're working an issue and there's some network condition during which you need to grab a packet capture, and that happens at 1 in the morning, for example, you can fire off an event to let you know it's happened, or you can even work with your ops folks and have them execute this thing, and then you've got data there.
I'm thinking voice. So-and-so's reporting that the voice...
I try not to think about voice.
I know. But I'm thinking, so-and-so's whining that... You could create a script where you tell the help desk to type in, give them a few commands about the source IP or whatever, and then it runs, and then all of a sudden you get an email with the packet capture in it, and you're looking at, right, you haven't had to do 42 steps.
Somebody's video call is pixelated.
Yeah.
It's a constrained interface as well, so I'm running one command there, which is then the key bits are what switches do you want to run it on, what's your packet filter, and you're not having to get people to type in all the other things you got to do.
So you could give the script to the help desk, and and then they could just kick it, and then a PCAP would come up.
Oh, but it's canned, right?
As long as you can constrain the conditions enough. But yeah.
So can you go back to the workflow?
Yep.
Let a robot do it.
Whoops. Hang on. I think we're that tab there.
So other than the fact that you're grabbing packets off the wire programmatically, which is inherently cool, the thing that really jumped out to me, and anyone that's run a network of any size for any amount of time is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You tear out everything that you put in at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta
so that a year later, you don't go in there and go, what the heck is this from?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, how many times I used to be a firewall admin, and I know a bunch of people here have done that. You never ever remove anything?
Yep.
Because just in case. I've been back to places I worked at 10 years previously and found all these things with,
Artifacts.
LH, 2002, comment in 2004, don't know what this does, but 2007, don't know what this, still don't know. Lindsay put it in there, so it's probably, just leave it there. It's probably a reason. Yeah.
But I like the fact that that's just part of the automation workflow.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to point that out.
So again, that's just basically make our lives easier, right? It's not going to solve every problem of the world ever, but you know what? Make some of that stuff a little bit easier. In my case, I'm throwing it up into CloudShark, but obviously you could do something else with the PCAP if you wanted, whether you use that email it, store it on some file server, whatever works for you.
There's an irony here somewhere that the CLI is dead, but basically we've just moved the CLI to Slack and automated it.
So
The CLI.
So as I was writing, I was writing this workflow the other day, and I was thinking to myself, I'm writing this thing where I'm saying, okay, exclamation mark, multi-capture, open quote, port 179, close quote, and I'm thinking it's kind of this esoteric sort of interface, and then I'm like, we've all been working on that stuff for years.
I'm not knocking it because it does a lot in the background, which if you did those individual steps manually would be a heck of a lot of work. So I'm all in favor. I'm just quietly amused.
Yeah.
Is this
Place.
a workflow you could kick off from the CloudShark as well, or does it have to be through Slack?
I don't know what CloudShark supports going in that other direction. In theory, if they had somewhere there where you could enter that information and it made a remote webhook, then I could do exactly that. Like here, say I'm using Slack as my way of triggering that action, but that event could come from somewhere else. So that could come from, you could do it based on a Jira ticket. You could do it based on some internal web app or something that you had. You know, you can. The way that it comes in can come in from different places. CloudShark themselves, I don't know. As I said, I have no affiliation with them. I just it's cool.
And to look at this from a different way, if I've got instances of CloudShark running on a bunch of switches all over the organization.
So CloudShark in this case, CloudShark is a SaaS or on-prem offering.
Okay, so it's not running in a VM on the switch.
No, so it's a service offering. So they have an API, so I'm using their API to push a PCAP up to them.
Okay.
They then return a URL to me, and that URL is what I paste into here. So this just takes a PCAP that I've captured from anywhere. They've got an on-prem or a SaaS offering. In this case, I'm using the SaaS offering. The way I've got my packs set up, if you had an on-prem one, you would just configure the pack underneath the hood here just to point it to your internal URL, and that URL there would map to some internal name, whatever you've got associated with it.
Okay, so then if I'm running Wireshark or something, running some kind of application on a switch in this VM across a whole bunch of switches, can I use Workflow Composer if I need to update that software for some reason? Like there's a
if you
bug
wanted
that's
to,
discovered in
let's say you're using T-Shark. So I'm using T-Shark underneath, under the hood here for the actual packet capture. Part of the Wireshark package. If you wanted to push out an updated package for that, you could do that. The thing is, that VM is fundamentally it's a Linux VM. I would treat it with the same configuration management tools that you do for the rest of your Linux infrastructure. You could have a workflow that pushes out an updated package. You could, if you have Puppet or Ansible or Chef or whatever in place, you could use those as well.
Okay.
Whatever. It's no big deal. Now, I want to switch gears slightly, and I want to I'm going to do some performance testing using our guest VM, using the PerfSonar toolkit. Now, I just need to run this here first. Now, one thing we said before, we're talking about here. So that guest VM has two Ethernet interfaces on it. So it sees an ETH0 being its connection basically up to its management network, and it sees this one as ETH1. It just sees it as another Ethernet port. If you're just spanning traffic into there, then that from the switch's perspective, that is just another Ethernet port, or it's a port channel in this case that you're sending traffic to. So if you're spanning traffic, some of the same rules apply around what configurations you can have on your destination port. Like basically it can't be acting as a normal switch port. So, but we can flip it over and make it act like another switch port. We can map it as a switch port through to here, and then I can put an IP address on here, and then that can then inject traffic back down in. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I just kicked off. He knows more about the specific technical bits of what's going on.
Just to add one comment over here. So this is exactly what Samir and Chirag, the previous presenters, were saying. So it's not just like for monitoring, you can do the guest VM, but the way it's built into the architecture. So it's like with this kind of use case, it's used as a switching routing port also. So it kind of can participate into that domain as well.
Yeah. So the specifics of the changes I made under the hood, they are not that important, but I've flipped it around. So I've now got a couple of leaf switches. The VMs on those switches now effectively have IP addresses that can connect into that fabric. They can send traffic across that network fabric. So now what I've got is I've got a couple of probes where I can send and receive traffic from them. I've got the PerfSonar toolkit installed in there. I don't have the full everything PerfSonar servers and APIs in there. I've just got the basic toolkits in place. But what that lets me do is quickly run iPerf, one-way tests, trace path tests, things like that, between my two VMs. So I can run them across the fabric. So again, I set up some stuff here. The idea being, let's say someone comes along and says, hey, I've got this problem between this server here and that server there. What you really want to do is you want to be able to measure performance at the closest points on the network to where those servers are. So if I know that my fabric's going okay there, then I can say to the users, it's probably not my issue. So now if I run, so I've got it set up here, so I can do BWCTL, just a command you can use PerfSonar, bandwidth control, I guess it stands for. The test, so I've just got a restricted set of tests that I've set it up for here, source and destination, and I can give it some additional, parameters if I want to, which I might do just for the hell of it. So that's going to go and run an iPerf test, iPerf 3 between those two devices. Defaults I've got set up here to use TCP for testing, and I've set bandwidth equals 0, which is basically saying go as hard as you can, find out how much bandwidth we've got between these 2 points. That will take probably around up to a minute or so, I think. So if we look at what's going on my server on the back end. So there's my actions. It's out. If you look in the fine print there, basically it's saying it's connecting to the VM, saying run this using that remote target with the particular parameters. All going well. That will complete in about a minute or so, and it will spit back the results to us in Slack. Now, I haven't done any really fancy formatting or anything like that with the results here. What I really should do is get the results back in JSON and manipulate them, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, well, you know, I just wanted it to spit back the results and get it read for me working. So, come on.
Get the result. I just want to add, right now we are doing a test. It's on. Oh, sorry. So right now, if you see, right now we are doing one source and one destination, but you have also option where you have a multiple source and multiple destination, where you different source and different destination you wanted to measure the performance, right? So that's also possible. So the pipe which you saw, 10 gig pipe, can be changed to layer 2, layer 3 as well. So you can create a logical interface directly on the guest VM to treat as a logical interface. So each logical interface you can map it to each container.
Yeah.
So you can send the traffic.
Actually, I'm not using containers here, but yeah, you can break it up further if you want to.
So you can sub electronic effectively.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like I am tagging traffic from the switch through to the VM here.
Right.
But I'm just.
So it's
I'm
a
keeping
full-on
it
Ethernet port. It's not a
Yes.
pseudo
Yeah,
pretend,
it's a-
limited functionality,
It's got-
untagged packets. It's a
like,
full-on.
From the switch point of view, it just looks like another port.
It's a
I
regular
love so
port.
many
Yeah.
things about
Yeah.
this.
But there's no limitations, is what I'm saying. You've sort of worked through some of the basics, and you're through to implementate, like solid implementation.
So
So-
only limitation is we have to be based on the spec. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all.
No, of course there are limitations. What I'm saying is it's not like it's only an access port.
Yeah.
It's actually a fully featured
Yeah.
Ethernet port.
Yep.
And you can rate limit the port as well.
Okay.
So let's say if you have a lot of traffic coming in and going to the guest VM, you want it to reduce, you don't want to block it, you can put the filter on that.
Okay.
So you can see there, so I was going between two devices in my fabric. These are 9140s. I get about 7.6 gigs there. As I said, I'll probably talk to Nick later on and find out what I can get that close to 10.
Yeah.
But it's a 10 gig hardware pass. A 10 gig is my absolute theoretical maximum anyway. And that's not with doing any real particular tuning from a PerfSonar point of view. That's just using some pretty standard tests. But the point is, I can actually generate and measure quite a reasonable volume of traffic across there.
That's pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a non-tuned TCP-based iPerf test over 10 gig. That's
Yeah, I think you're
pretty
hitting the
much
TCP stack limitations,
Yep.
not
Yeah.
the network limitations.
Yeah.
So you can run it over UDP and get
Yeah,
more.
I mean, you can make some other changes too that'll definitely get that up to 9.85 or something like that.
Yeah, we saw on our different platform, we also noticed that it was more than 9.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got one more thing to run, and then I know when Tom will want me to wrap up.
One more thing.
Here's the lesson, kids. Always do what Tom says. Just a quick one around here. This is TracePath. Just to see, this doing like traceroute across our network, but also looking what is our MTU across there. So particularly if you're dealing with MTU issues. You'll see here in my fabric, it's actually 1500 is actually what's currently set up in there, because who needs jumbo frames anyway? But hey, if you're hearing reports of if people are saying, hey, I think I've got these MTU issues, I can quickly run that. It runs that across my fabric. I know what my fabric's doing. At least I know, and I can, in this case, doing edge to edge. At least I know what that's responding as. Then if it's a problem somewhere else, I know where to look. Probably not me.
There are huge implications into being able to do in-skin testing like this.
Mean time to innocence.
It's
I want mean time to innocence and mean
mean
time to pay rise. They're the two things I care about.
It's not going to replace a full server. Like it's an expensive way of putting a server in your data center. If that's all you want. But often
As a network
just don't
engineer, you
have
know how
access to
expensive
the
it is for me to
server, I
put a
don't
server
have
in my
the-
data
yeah,
center?
exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly
So,
right.
quick and easy, solve those sorts of problems. So
Thank you. Excellent.
thanks.
Good job.